Welcome back to Epic Exchanges. I'm your host, Kelly Snider, and Epic Exchanges is all about sharing people's inspiring stories of overcoming difficult times in life, challenges, so that you know that you're not alone when you hear that story if you're going through something difficult. And today I'm really excited to welcome Bobbie Malatesta to the podcast. Bobbie, why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, hello, Kelly. Thank you for having me, and congratulations on your recent book launch. Very exciting stuff. Um, so I'm Bobbie the Awesome Malatesta. I say it that way so that people feel empowered to listen to the positive voices in their heads, not just because I'm unhumble. It's a permission device, and it's uncomfortable sometimes. But I reside in Connecticut, where I just opened my first store, non-alcoholic beverage place and sober social club. First of many in my blueprint in my mind, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, I'm excited. I've been watching your progress and everything that you've done over the last few years since we first connected. And you have come so far from that first time we connected in that business course. So I'm excited for you to share your story. So I'm just going to let you jump in and share.
Okay. My story, I love that your show is about the transformation. And I wish I could say that my story had one of those moments or one even common theme. And I think the biggest is addiction. That was the theme for me. I grew up around alcohol, substance abuse, and I aspired to not grow up to be an alcoholic. Like that's where my story starts. And instead, I ended up a gambleaholic. Now, let me tell you, Kelly, all of this is upon reflection, is how I say it, because I didn't know all this when it was happening, of course. And I learn every single day. So my first boyfriend or love was gambling. I started gambling as a kid, and I still eventually, when I went to treatment, people asked, "Are you going for gambling or for alcohol?" So my alcohol use had ramped up as well. And my recovery journey has taught me that the addiction stuff was actually a way to escape from all the other stuff. So that's why I'm saying uh, it's kind of a bunch of different buckets. And even I haven't gambled in over 7 years. I haven't drank in almost 5. But even since giving up both of those things, a lot of life has happened. There was a point in 2021 where I had my mother, my cousin, and aunt and uncle all in the hospital at the same time for different reasons. And then my stepfather died while my mother was in the hospital. Like that was a huge part of my story. And the fact that I stayed sober and didn't go back to gambling during all of that is a big part of my transformation. And then recently, I started doing more things. I'm very proud, and I hope it's okay that I talk about last week for a minute, because I didn't realize until watching myself back. I had a great opportunity to speak last week, and as I told you, unscripted. And a big part of the talk was about, even though I'm showing up every day, and I am showing up every day, whether it's on my podcast or in front of my customers or behind the computer screen or the part-time job work or all the things, my dream is huge. I want a chain of recovery playgrounds. I want stores like mine in every city. I want flagship stores, all under the umbrella of no alcohol, gambling, and kids, because I believe adults need to play again. I believe that adults can get dopamine from things other than substances and behavioral addiction. I believe that adults can live their best life. Those are all the things that are really important to the 321 brand. And it all came out of my story. So last week when I shared my story, what I realized was, if I had figured it out 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have had that opportunity last week. It's really fun when you could be present and reflect back and almost see the roadmap. Like you shared with me before we got on about some speed bumps in life, and this didn't go the way it looked like it was going a week ago. Um, and what's interesting is after all of it's over, if we actually do the reflection, it's like, oh, okay, well, now the greater thing wouldn't have happened if we didn't have the rough spots. So that's, aside from addiction, that's the other big part of my story is all the rough spots. And I've been dealt a lot of rough spots, or I created them, whatever you believe in.
Right. And I have so many places I'd like to go back to in your story and in your process, but I do agree that life's, right? And it's not all roses. It's not a straight line. It's not the easy road. Sometimes it's really bumpy. Sometimes those speed bumps are huge, and sometimes we hit a dead end and we got to turn around and start over again. So you mentioned when you went to recovery and somebody asked if you were going for gambling or alcoholism. I'm assuming you ended up kind of dealing with both at a similar
Well,
time, because recovery is recovery.
I went for gambling at that time. I had, so I landed my dream job. Like I had been working on being director of floral by the time I was 40 for 10 years, learned how to golf, dress like a girl, all the things in corporate America. And when I was 39, I got this dream job. And then I go, and the first weekend I'm there, I blow all my money, including my rent money. And here I was alone in the city. So the first time I quit was out of fear, and like survival. It wasn't because I necessarily wanted to give up gambling. Um, and then 2016, I relapsed at the end of 2015, and 2016 was a blur. Come to find out later, because if I wasn't drinking, or if I wasn't gambling, I was drinking to forget how much I lost or all the things. And I remember my employees telling me like they thought I was like in an abusive relationship. They could see the change, but gambling doesn't smell on your breath. I was always like a responsible, I think they call it functional drinker. And when I did get asked that question, I was like, one thing at a time, one thing at a time. So when I went to rehab, it was about gambling. I got out, and in 2019, still the drinking was ramping up. People were holding a mirror up to me, and I said, okay, well, I won't drink to cope. That was my rule. And I go to Asia on a recovery trip where the qualification was you shouldn't drink for 30 days, or they ask you to not drink. And we come back February 1st of 2020, but I can't drink to cope. My job won't let me back in. The world was completely upside down. And the first night I tried to go out to drink, out to a bar to see if I could handle without drinking, I get a text that my estranged biological father died, and I'm the oldest kid, so I get to throw the funeral. I throw him the funeral. The next day, the world shuts down. And then every month for the next 6 months, somebody dies. Can't drink to cope. So I actually didn't quit drinking on purpose. I was trying to mindfully drink, and it evolved into there's just no reason to have alcohol in my life.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And you did touch on something too, where you like the addictions generally are coping strategies for the stuff that really has traumatized us, hurt us, that we can't quite deal with. We need some way to handle what's going on, to numb it. I mean, that's where food came into my world and at a very young age. But gambling, alcohol, food, sex, pornography, all of these things are ways of disconnecting from what's really hurting us deep down. So when did you start kind of touching that?
Well, inpatient, outpatient, lots of 12 step. Um, in the 12 steps, there's a sought through prayer, step 11. I'm a rule follower, Kelly. I try to be a rule follower. Um, Step 11 is sought through prayer and meditation. And I was not a religious person, but I was like, I have to do the work. So all of that effort and work on my recovery is I did some healing. Now, since I quit drinking, I've discovered some things. I used to make very poor choices when it came to relationships and men. And the latest in the last year, two things have happened. One, I figured out that I am worth it, right? I always settled. I didn't feel any worth because I'm like, how does someone abandon their kids to go start over? And like, how do you not show up for recitals? Like when you see all these good dads in the world that are active, so that was really devaluing. And then last summer I learned I had a memory, so to speak, of this time where my brother was picked over me to go to Disney and I didn't get to go. And a conversation that looked something like, well, we don't always get what we want. Um, and it was like, if I've had that limiting belief, we talk a lot about limiting beliefs in the ecosystem, right? But do we really even know where they came from or why we feel that way? So life isn't fair. You can't always get what you want. So as an entrepreneur, I go into it that way. I've been tripped up for a few years, right? It wasn't until last year that I was like, hell no, I can get anything I want. And I like rewrote that song and that dialogue in my head, but I literally had to do it out loud a bunch of times to do that. So that's how that all worked out.
Well, I have to say, I was actually thinking about saying this when we finished recording, but I think that it's important for the audience to hear this, is that I've been super impressed just watching you over social media. You go for things. You just step out there and you go for it. You auditioned for Shark Tank. Like you do the big things that people think, oh, I'd love to do that sometime, but I'm not good enough, or I would never get on, or I would never, whatever set thing we tell ourselves. So what is it that helps you just go for it like that?
I know the answer. I just want to say it without crying. So, as important as it was to be floral director, like why I wanted that job was so that I could help the people because I started as a floral manager. So, I wanted to help change the rules. So, I wanted to understand and I wanted to make their jobs easier. That was like one of my guiding principles. Now I know I could never go back. Like, I'm literally handpicked for what I'm doing. I am the one who has to build a chain of recovery playgrounds. I am the female gambler. It is my responsibility and my duty to share my story, to tell people about all the things that have happened and to be prepared to help them by my life experiences. I had a big shift in 2020 where everything, instead of it being victim mode, shifted to gratitude when I figured out that all the things that have happened, like I really should be dead. I had an uncle that committed suicide the week between Christmas and New Year's. And when I was in the darkest days of gambling, when most people give up because there's no freaking hope when you're in that spot. Because he had done that, I couldn't do it to my mother again. I still had that. So, yes, for many, many years, it was poor me. We lost Uncle Lollipop, blah, 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 blah. But then once I had this aha, Bob didn't abandon me because I was a bad daughter. I wasn't worth it. Bob was sick with an addiction too, right? Like, so there's all this. That's why the learning, the growing, the showing up, the having conversations. Like, people will talk to me about like music and um, the election, all these things. I don't know what's going on because I'm working on me and my dream. Like, I literally have no room for noise. There's not enough hours in the day. And they say, like, when you give up gambling or you give up drinking, you should get all this time. Well, all my time's invested back in. So I'm literally believe that I'm handpicked and it's just my responsibility.
I love that because it shows that there's something deeper than just an idea. There's a passion, there's a mission that you've been entrusted with and you're going for it. So thank you for going for it. It makes me just want to ask you, if someone's listening and they think that they might have a mission, they've got a passion for something and everything, how would you encourage them? What would you tell them to do or that they should know?
Well, I love that question because you and what you do is actually one of the answers. Like if they were on a self-discovery journey, right? Like they don't have to go to a 12-step meeting. They could find a Kelly that helps them like sort through their story, find what they need to find. Um, Journal. Like I would tell them, go for it. I definitely have been very what outsiders might look like is reckless, quitting the corporate job, traveling around the country, talking to strangers, sleeping in my car. I've done a lot of things that I don't recommend everybody do unless they're sure. But if you are someone who is in an environment, check your surroundings. Are you surrounding yourself with people that would support you no matter what you did? Because it becomes very hard if you're not. And then do things like journaling or self-discovery, go walk in nature. Like that's part of why I share the woods, the camping, the travel. All of that is part of what I learned. Listening to people instead of just scrolling or watching, they don't call it the boob tube for no reason. Um, are you absorbing quality stuff so that you can sort it out? And I keep journaling is the one that keeps popping up because when we write, we can get in touch with our true self. And if you have that little itch or that little knowingness, I would definitely explore it.
Right. Well, I want to encourage anybody who's listening to find Bobbie on social media and follow her because it is so inspiring and encouraging and makes me, just speaking for myself, it makes me go, I need to be doing more. I need to jump out there and jump in and do the things that bring me alive because that's how I see you on social media as someone who is alive and living all the things that life brings into your world. So thank you for sharing that with all the rest of us so that we can catch that spark and try to do the same because our world needs more people who have come truly alive.
Thank you so much for that, Kelly. And you really are making me feel very special right now because that's literally what it's about. If I give up gambling and drinking, or people give up the relationships maybe they shouldn't be in, whether it's with food or people or whatever, and they're not then taking the opportunity to live their best life, what is the point? And that's the
Yeah.
message I'm trying to get across is like, be alive to live is actually like my passion.
I
That's
love
what it
that.
is.
So tell people how they can find you.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
here
If
we
you're on
go
a
to
social media
follow all things
platform,
Bobbie.
if you're on a social media platform, I am there. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, all the places. The name of the store, my podcast, the brand is all 321 No Kiddin'. That's No Kiddin' without a G. Depending on the platform, it might say Sober Playground, it might say something else. And there also may be 3-21, depending on the platform. It's kind of hard when you have a unique name like this to be consistent. My website's 321nokidden.com, my link tree. So you can find me wherever you want to be. I feel like that's another responsibility of mine is to meet people where they're at.
Right. And we will make sure to share all of those links with people. So they'll be in the show notes. They'll be on our social media channels. So if you want to find Bobbie, there is no excuse to not be able to find her because we'll provide all of that for you.
Thank you so much, Kelly.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing your story with me. It's taken me a long time to reach out to you, but I'm so glad that we've made this happen.
Same. I really appreciate you having me on.